got to kind of switch between a bunch of different cameras. All the cameras are actually in the same enclosure though. So this is Grayson. He's walking away from us. He's going into the medical pen. And so Grayson and that other white wolf that we saw just a minute ago, those two are brothers. They look super, super similar. Oop, it switched up a little bit. There it goes. They look really, really similar. They're both bright white. It's just because they're Arctic gray wolves and they're brothers. So they're a little bit tough to tell apart. They look really similar, but I've been just staring at them for so long that now I have kind of figured it out. All right, a wolf went over there on the right. They're all just kind of trotting around, which is super nice. I think there's a little bit of fun stuff going on behind the scenes. We've had some trouble with our pond, the pond in their enclosure. And so there have been a lot of wolf care staff kind of working on the pond. So these guys are up and moving around. So there's Grayson. He's trotting on past, following Axel, his brother, who headed up the hill. So typically when they head up the hill, it's a little bit harder to find them on the camera just because there's so much foliage. There's so many trees and leaves. It's kind of tough to spot these guys. But we do have 4 wolves in this enclosure. I think now officially they've all gone up the hill. So this is the bottom of the hill we just saw when we were looking down. That camera's up here. And so it sort of looks over here, but we're able to see a little bit closer down here. So we will return to our wolf cams toward the end when we answer some questions. But until then, I am going to give you guys just a nice little brief talk about gray wolves. So the gray wolf is a species of animal, and it's kind of our specialty here at the International Wolf Center. So we are an educational facility. Our whole purpose is to teach people just like you guys all about wolves. They're kind of strange animals. There's a lot of information out there about them, but it's not all true. So there's a lot of, like, in Disney movies and like different sources, they might have information about wolves that's not super factual. And so we're kind of here to help people know a lot more true things about wolves, to help you guys form your own opinions about these animals. So thank you guys so much for joining. You are helping us meet our mission because we're all about educating people all around the world. To help us do this, we do have our wolves here at our center. We have 4 exhibit pack members. So these guys right here, we did just get a chance to see Axel and Grayson briefly. Hopefully we're going to see them again. It's always tough because they are wild animals and it's really hot out here today. It's like 80. And wolves don't really like 80. They really like winter. They are built for the cold. And then in summer, they typically sleep in the day and then they're up a lot more at night. So they're seasonally nocturnal. But we're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later. So for our wolves, we do have Axel and Grayson. Those are the 2 wolves that we saw. They are Arctic gray wolves. They're still gray wolves. They're the exact same species of animal. They look a little bit different because they have different hair colors. It's because they're found in different parts of the world. So for Arctic gray wolves, they're found really far north. And there aren't any trees for them to blend in with. It's just kind of snowy, rocky ground. It's called the tundra, way up in the Arctic Circle. So for Axel and Grayson, they're just going to be white. They stay white all year round. They don't change colors, but they are still called gray wolves. So those 2 are 4 years old. They're brothers. They're a little dynamic duo. And then Bolts is 8 years old, and he is a Great Plains gray wolf. So he's actually our local wolf, at least here at the International Wolf Center. We are in Ely, Minnesota, so northern Minnesota, right next to the Canadian border, kind of smack dab in the middle of North America. And Bolts would be found here in Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ontario, kind of that whole middle section of North America. And so he's kind of got that darker fur because it's going to help him blend in with the trees that we have around here. And then Denali is our northwestern gray wolf. And those are found up in Alaska all the way down through Yellowstone. So it's kind of that Rocky Mountain gray wolf. And Denali doesn't really look like his wild counterparts because he's gone really, really white with age. So he's just kind of getting older. We did see him briefly. I totally forgot we saw him briefly, but he was that wolf that's kind of lumbering in. He's got that bright white head. So wild wolves typically aren't going to be going white with age because they don't really die of old age. They're usually going to die actually a lot sooner. So they might die at like 4 to 6 years old. But Denali's 12, going strong, doing super well because he's in captivity. He has all of his needs met. We can give him medical attention if he needs it. And so Denali has gotten to a nice ripe old age. He has had time to turn white with age. So in the wild, he'd be like a dark gray color. He used to be dark gray, but now he's going very, very white. But Denali's still going strong. He is 12 years old and he's doing super well. And then finally, we do have one more wolf here on our site, but he is not actually visible to the public. We do have webcams on him, and I'll try to find him at the end again. I think he's just napping in the shade, though, so we can't see him. But his name is Grizzer, and Grizzer is retired, so he lives in our retirement enclosure. It's just separate from the other wolves. They're not necessarily alone. Grizzer did live in retirement with 2 other wolves recently, but unfortunately, both those wolves did pass away, so he's kind of outliving his roommates. But Grizzer now lives alone in retirement, and he's retired so that he is not on view to the public. He can just live a more stress-free, relaxed life. Grizzer is actually the oldest wolf we've ever had at our center. He is 16 years old, so we broke our record many months ago, and he's just doing super well. He's really healthy for a 16-year-old wolf, and we're all rooting for him. He's doing great. So hopefully we get to see him later, but he is a little bit older and it's just hot out, so chances are he'll just be napping. All right, but now we're going to get into the discussion here. So we are going to be talking about gray wolves, but there are 2 species of wolf in the world. They're kind of 2 recognized species. This is always up for debate. There's lots of research going into this, trying to see what's technically maybe its own species, what's maybe just a subspecies of gray wolf. It's all very complicated. Currently, there's really just the gray wolf and the red wolf, but it's always up to change because science is always moving as people learn more and more about these topics. But right now, there's that gray wolf and then the red wolf. So usually, when you guys picture a wolf in your mind, chances are you are thinking of a gray wolf because gray wolves are found all over. They're throughout the Northern Hemisphere. They're up in Canada. They're in the United States. They're in Russia. They're in India. They're in Mexico. Those are all gray wolves. They're all the exact same species of animal. And that's the only one that we have here at our center. We have different subspecies like the Northwestern, the Arctics, but they're all gray wolves. Whereas the red wolf is its own species. And the red wolf is actually critically endangered. So in the wild, there aren't that many of them. And they're actually only found in 1 state in the United States. And it is North Carolina, which is kind of weird. People don't usually think of North Carolina when they're thinking of where wolves might live at the moment. But there are actually red wolves in North Carolina, and there are no gray wolves. Gray wolves are much further north and kind of farther into the west, but that east coast is the native range of the red wolf. So there are actually, though, only about 12 total red wolves in the wild at this point. So they're really, really endangered. There's lots of research going on trying to help those wolves come back kind of from the brink of extinction. There are about 200 in captivity, but right now, just about 12 in the wild. So here at our center, we do only have gray wolves. We kind of focus on the gray wolf. Those are the only wolves that we have here in captivity. But there are lots of red wolves around the country in different captive breeding programs trying to help those wolves out. So today we're really going to focus on that gray wolf kind of as our main topic of discussion. So we're going to start at the beginning with some little wolf pups. This picture is absolutely adorable, and it is of Axel, who we did see. He was that wolf kind of curled up in the corner that I tried to zoom in on, and then he immediately got up and started walking away. That was Axel, and this is also Axel, but he was so much littler. So of course, wolves do start out as pups, but you'll probably notice that Axel looks a little bit different. He doesn't only have littler ears and a shorter nose, but he's also a different color. So when wolves are born, they're actually born gray, which is kind of cool. And it's because they're only born with their undercoat. So underneath what we see, they have a second coat. And this is going to be their insulation layer. It's the one that keeps them really warm when they're adults. And then that outside coat, the guard hair layer, is going to be like a raincoat. So I do have a pelt here that hopefully, yes, you guys can see that. So this is my hand stroking it. I promise this is not a live wolf. This is from a pelt, from a donation. And so this outside layer is called the guard hair layer. And it's going to keep rain off of this wolf and keep them nice and dry. But underneath is that second layer. It's a little tough to see, but you can hopefully tell that this outside layer is a lighter color. So this is an Arctic. This outside layer is light. And then this inside layer, it's an entirely different layer of fur. And it's super fluffy and it's actually gray. So no matter what color that wolf is on the outside, whether they're brown or tan or all sorts of different colors, they're still going to have that dark gray color underneath in their undercoat layer. And so it's kind of like you put on a sweatshirt, that's your dark gray layer that you're going to be born with. And then as you grow on a raincoat, and then they get to keep their raincoat on for the rest of their lives. They never have to regrow it. But that's why gray wolf puppies are gray. All right, so that pack that they're living in is kind of like a family unit. So the mom and dad are usually going to be that dominant male and that dominant female, and they're usually the only ones having pups. So the only ones giving birth to those pups, and then the rest of the wolves in the pack are usually going to be like their adult brothers and sisters, maybe some other related wolves, maybe a couple of unrelated wolves, and those wolves are going to help take care of those new little tiny pups. Pups are born in April and May, which means that right now wild wolf pups are being born, which is kind of cool. And again, they're going to be that kind of dark grayish color that we see here, sort of no matter what color they are when they're adults. They're also born in den sites, and they're going to have that mother is going to have about 4 to 6 pups per litter. It doesn't mean that all of those pups are actually going to survive, but typically that's how many are born. But they could have more, they could have fewer. Kind of just depends on the resources available and their genetics. But these den sites are going to be nice and safe. That mom can crawl into that den, she can take care of her pups, and the rest of the pack will just be outside. They're not going to go in the den with her because it's a really, really small space for just her and her pups. But where are these den sites? So we're going to look at where they might be. They are actually in places called territories. And so this picture is a little bit confusing, but it's like if you were a bird and you were flying above the landscape and you were really, really far up and you were looking down, this would be kind of what you see if you were able to see those wolf pack territories. So each one of these colorful kind of shapes represents a wolf pack's territory. So in each one of these areas, you might have on average about 5 wolves living there. So you'd have that dominant male, dominant female, the mom and dad, maybe 2 of their full-grown offspring, maybe 3 new pups, all living in this kind of big colorful shape. So you have that bird kind of flying above, looking down. So you may notice that there's not a whole lot of overlapping. So these shapes, these territories aren't really covering each other, which means that the wolves must be using some sort of form of territory defense in order to let other wolves know that this is their territory and that they're defending it. So do you guys know, I'm going to ask a question here. We'll see how this works. Hopefully it does. And do you guys know how wolves mark their territory? How do they let the other wolf packs know that this is their home, that this is their territory?
Okay, guys. You guys can put it in the chat. Stevie can't see your chat, so I can read it. May says they lick it. Lily says they pee. Aaron says they pee. Gabby says they go to the bathroom.
These are all good. Yes, there's a lot of peeing, and there's just a lot of peeing involved. It's absolutely true. So we'll definitely start with that one. Was that kind of the general consensus? Did we have a lot of people saying peeing?
That's exactly what they said. Yeah. Going to the bathroom. Pee. Yep. We like to talk about pee and poop. It's all good.
It's good. Well, now we have pictures, so we can all see pictures of wolves peeing and pooping. It is very natural. So if you want to use the scientific term, because I know everybody wants the scientific term for peeing, it is urination. And for pooping, it's defecation. So those are some really fun words, of course, and it's supernatural. This is just what wolves do. It's totally normal for them. They pee on things to let other wolves know, hey, this is mine. So if another wolf's walking along and they catch a whiff of somebody else's pee and they're not in their pack, they realize that they might be in a different wolf's pack, and so they can kind of turn around and go the other way because they'll realize that they might be in their territory. So it's totally normal for wolves. This is not normal for people. So we don't go around peeing in our house to tell everyone that it's our home. Don't do that. I don't recommend. But for wolves, this is totally normal for them. They also are going to use one more thing for that territorial defense, in addition to, of course, just defending their territory. If another wolf comes in, they can snarl at them and just nicely recommend that that wolf turn around. So they are going to come into conflict with other wolves as well. That can definitely happen. But we're kind of just talking about what their defense mechanisms are sort of before it comes to that. So the other one where they can let other wolves know that this is their territory is howling. So howling is super important for making noise, of course, and they're going to be letting those other packs know that they're there and they're still defending their territory. So the chorus howl is a type of howl where the pack howls together. So everybody kind of gets involved, they all get to howl, and a lot of the times that'll set off the other wolf packs in the area as well. In their own territories, these guys will howl, and then those wolves might hear them, and they want to howl back. So this is kind of like a little spot check for these wolves. They're letting everybody know where they are, where the pack territory is, so everybody kind of knows that those territories are still being defended, that the pack is still there. There are lots of different types of howling. There's like the lonesome howl, where that's a lone wolf, and maybe they left their parents' pack and went off to seek their fortune, and they're trying to find a mate. Well, they might use the lonesome howl in order to do that, to kind of let other wolves in the area know that they're out there and they're searching. And in that case, that wolf might be able to find a mate and then become the dominant male or dominant female of their own pack that they're going to start themselves. So howling is super, super important. It's kind of a very common long distance form of communication for wolves. All right, so within these territories, they're going to be different sizes. So you probably noticed all those colorful shapes. They weren't all the same size. They're all different shapes and they're all different sizes. And it actually just depends on how much prey is there. So like here in Minnesota, we have a lot of prey. We have lush forests, beautiful. We have white-tailed deer everywhere. It's hard to drive anywhere without having to slam on the brakes because they're running across the road. So we have lots and lots of prey available for wolves. So wolves in this area might have kind of a smaller territory than in other areas because they don't have to travel very far to find food. But in places where there's a low density of prey, so like the Arctic or the desert, where animals are just really spread out because there's not very much vegetation, those animals are going to be harder to find. So wolves will have to travel further to find them, which means they might have a really large territory. So this shows there on the left, we've got a really high density. So that will be like here in Minnesota where there's a lush green forest. It's not going to be that hard for wolves to find that prey. They don't have to travel as far. It still might be hard to hunt it, but it's just not going to be as tough to actually find it. And so they might have a little territory, like here in Minnesota, where we have about 60 square miles per wolf territory on average. And then in the Arctic, there on the right, that low density, that one might be more like on average 1,000 square miles per wolf pack territory. So they are going to differ quite a bit, just depending on the amount of food available. All right, so what are they eating? What prey might these wolves be looking for anywhere in the world? So maybe in the Arctic, maybe here in Minnesota, in the desert, anywhere. Can you guys think of any prey animals that wolves might eat?
We've got deer, moose.
Deer? Oh,
Yep.
yes.
Any other ideas? Elk, moose.
Oh, these are all excellent. Moose, yes.
Kieran, do you know what they might eat in Nunavut? Deer, moose, and elk. Bears, rabbit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so those are all wonderful answers. For bears, they usually wouldn't eat a bear, but I absolutely support the idea that they could attack a bear. Sometimes bears and wolves come into conflict, like over a carcass. Like if there's a dead elk and a bear finds it and a wolf finds it, they can definitely fight over that animal because they both want it. Or even if the wolves killed it and the bear kind of comes up to them and sees it, they can definitely fight. There's no honor system in the wild. It's kind of whoever can defend that prey.
And Kieran said caribou, Arctic hare, and lemmings in Nunavut.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, in the Arctic, that's definitely what they're eating. That's awesome. Yes, so all those answers were beautiful. We've kind of clumped up mainly what wolves eat into the term ungulate. So that doesn't mean that the other animals are wrong. They're absolutely right. Wolves just mostly eat what are called ungulates. So an ungulate is a large hooved mammal. So here we have pictured a moose, an elk, a mountain goat, a caribou, a bison, a white-tailed deer, and a musk oxen. And those are just some ungulates. Basically, they're just those huge animals with big old hooves. But they also supplement it with smaller animals, like here in Minnesota, like with the snowshoe hare, the beaver. There are lots of other little animals, the Arctic hare up in the Arctic, lemmings, absolutely, kind of whatever they can get their paws on. Sometimes they'll eat fish as well. It's kind of anything that they can hunt. But mostly it's going to be those big, big animals. And so this is going to obviously be really hard for those wolves to do. How are they able to hunt these huge animals with these massive hooves? It can be really dangerous. A bison can be up to 2,000 pounds. They're giant and they can be pretty scary for those wolves. So they have a couple of different ways that they're going to kind of fight this and they'll combat it. One is that they're awake and asleep at the same time as those animals. So all those ungulates, most of those animals are called crepuscular. And so you've probably heard of nocturnal. Nocturnal is an animal that is asleep during the day and awake at night like an owl or a bat. And then diurnal is what we are, where we sleep at night and we're awake during the day. And then crepuscular is kind of the weird other one. So crepuscular is where they're most active at really early in the morning and late in the evening. And then the middle of the night and the middle of the day, they kind of just sleep, sort of taking their little cat naps. Sort of a weird sleep pattern, but it's totally normal. And that's why, like for deer, there are so many deer on the roads early in the morning and late in the evening, because they're also crepuscular. So wolves are awake at the right time to hunt their prey. So that's going to be super helpful. Kind of step one is being awake at the right time. They also have super big paws and something called interdigital webbing. So if you take your hand, oh, excuse me, if you take your hand and put it like this out in front of you, and you pinch this little tiny bit of skin, you've got a little tiny bit of skin, this is interdigital webbing. Ours is not very impressive, but wolves have more of it, and they actually have webbed feet so that they can walk on top of the snow, and it's going to be super helpful for them when they are chasing prey in really deep snow. They're also just really good at running for long distances. They go really fast and they can run a long time. So in just 20 minutes, they can run about 12 and a half miles. So they're going super, super fast. They're going up to 38 miles per hour. for 20 minutes. That's a really long time, and they're going to use this to their advantage when they're trying to tire out their prey. So they're kind of stalk and pursuit predators. They're also selective hunters. So they're going after what's easy. They're not trying to hunt that huge, really healthy moose if they don't have to. If there's a really sickly one with a limp or arthritis or something like that, it's just going to be easier because it's going to be less dangerous for those wolves, and it's going to be more efficient. So it's more likely that they'll actually end up killing the animal and end up with a meal. So that's called being a selective hunter. They're also just super social, and so this means they're living in those packs. They're not going to be hunting that huge bull moose alone. They live in that pack. They're going to hunt together when going after really big prey, and that's really going to help them. But they are also just kind of social animals in general, not only while they're hunting, but they are pack animals. So wolves are going to be really social, and it's definitely super important for them in their lives, just in their social lives. So does anybody have any idea as to how wolves communicate?
Oh, this will be interesting. How do wolves communicate, boys and girls? Barking, howling. Gabby said barking. Dawson and Elise say howling. Maxime says howling.
Yes, we've hit our first one right off the bat. Yes, I've kind of grouped it into vocalizations, but absolutely. Barking, howling,
Whining.
all those noises. Whining, yes. Whimpering, growling, absolutely. Those are all awesome. Yeah, these guys are going to use their voices kind of like we do in order to talk to each other. Obviously, they're not really forming words like we do, but they're still going to use those voices to their advantage. So for like howling, it's long distance, like that lonesome howl, like the chorus howl. It's letting other wolves know really far away what's going on. They can use it to bring the pack together before a hunt, or if they've lost a pack mate, they can howl and let that pack mate know where they are. Barking, whimpering, whining, all those things are going to be really important, just like for our dogs at home. Some of them are going to sound kind of similar, like growling means kind of something similar. They don't want to deal with whatever is going on, or they're trying to defend their kill from someone else. They're going to have a lot of the same vocalizations our dogs do. Another one is body language. So this one's a little bit different, but this is just them using their ears and their tails and kind of where their body is, how they're carrying themselves in order to send a message. So like in this photo, Axel, that white wolf with his tail straight up, he is super, super confident, and that's what the tail position means. It means that he is feeling good, he's very confident, he's kind of asserting his dominance over his brother Grayson. He's got a chin rest, so Axel's putting his whole head over his brother Grayson. His brother Grayson's got his ears out. It means he's not super certain. We've got Bolts, that brown wolf, in the background snarling. He's got his teeth out. He is not too pleased. So this is all different parts of body language. It's them just using their bodies in order to talk to each other. And then finally, one we've kind of already talked about, olfaction. So they're using sense of smell in order to talk to each other. So this wolf is Axel, and he's sniffing at some pee on a pile of snow. And so that's going to be really, really helpful, like we talked about before, with like territory marking and just for them to recognize each other and kind of check in on each other. All right, but where can we find wolves? So wolves are really all over the northern hemisphere, kind of like we talked about before. So these yellowish patches show where they are currently found today. And again, these are just gray wolves. We're not talking about that red wolf, which is just in a little bit of North Carolina. In these red patches, so those 3 red circles, and then also Japan, which is on the right, that little strip of red. In those 4 places, wolves historically would have been found, but they have now been extirpated in some of those locations. And extirpated is a great, fun, fancy word for you to use with all of your friends. Extirpated means locally extinct. So if an animal is extinct, it's no longer found anywhere worldwide in the wild. But if it's extirpated, it's no longer found anywhere in a specific region in the wild. So basically, they used to be in those areas, but now they aren't anymore. All right, so why should you care? Why am I still talking? Wolves are a really important part of their ecosystem, just like other animals in their own ecosystems. They play lots of important roles, from providing dead animals for scavengers to eat, to killing those deer, which might eat a lot of vegetation. And so they help more vegetation to grow. So they have a lot of different roles, and your opinion does matter. So at the Wolf Center, we are trying to provide you with factual information to help you form your own opinions about these animals. And now I promise I'm done talking. If you guys do have questions, you can put them in the chat. And in the meantime, I will be searching around to see if we can find these guys out here.
We did have a question a while ago about, you mentioned that one of the wolves was 16. So how many years would that be in human years? Oh my gosh, look at that wolf. Guys, look.
This is Axel. Oh, where's he going? He just sneezed. Yeah, so 16 in human years. So on average, they live about 13 to 15 years in captivity. So I'm not sure, because the oldest wolf on record was 21. So it can be done. They can live longer than 13 to 15. It's just not very typical. So I would say he's probably definitely 80s or 90s.
Okay, I think that's what they were getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's up there, but he's doing very well.
Good. Any more questions, boys and girls? I will just hope that the wolves will be coming into the screen in one of the cameras, but this is a great chance to ask a wolf expert. Oh, look, there he is.
No, I think he's checking things out as they're happening.
They asked when are their birthdays? Maybe she didn't hear when the pups were born.
Oh yeah, so they're usually born in April or May. For these guys, Axel, who we're kind of following around, I don't know, maybe he went over here. Axel's birthday is May 2nd. So he just, there he is again. So he just turned 4. Boltz's birthday is March 17th. So he's a St. Patrick's wolf pup, St. Patrick's Day wolf pup. Grizzer's birthday was May 5th. So he's a little Cinco de Mayo wolf pup. And then Denali's birthday is April 27th. So kind of all in that general April-May terms, but Boltz definitely had a super early birthday. He's in March. It's the earliest birthday we've had.
And C would like to know, are the wolves that you have at the International Wolf Center fairly tame?
Great question. Yeah, so they're what we call socialized. I don't know if you guys can see him, but he's in the bush right in the middle of the screen right now. There he is. Yeah, so we call them socialized. So basically it means that they're used to people. So people do go into the enclosure, but they are highly trained people. They are our wolf care, our wolf care staff members. And so they're really specific people. They're not tame because not just anyone can walk in there. I can't walk in there either, and I've worked here for 10 months. So they're definitely not tame animals, but they are accustomed to people. So it means that they feel safer when they are in this enclosure, which is definitely on display to the public. So we saw those windows before that Denali was looking through. These guys can definitely see through those windows. And so that's why we have them socialized. And basically that just means that they were hand raised by people. So these guys were hand raised by humans. They got 24/7 care. And I think we're about to see a human possibly go in. I'm not sure, but Axel is very excited about whatever's happening here. So people can go into the enclosure. These two are highly trained specialists here who have lots of training for going into the enclosure, and the wolves know them super well, which we can tell right now because Axel is just rubbing up against the fence, which is a greeting. But at the same time, they are wild animals. They are unpredictable. These people have to take basic precautions, such as wearing long, thick sleeves. They're being really careful while they're out there because these are not pets. So they are wild animals. and they can definitely be pretty unpredictable because of that. So we kind of bred dogs from wolves for a reason. Wolves, dogs are the best version of a wolf to kind of interact with as a human. So definitely they're not pets, but they don't mind people very much. Obviously, they know these people super well, and those people are being really, really careful. Sorry, that was a really long-winded answer to your question.
Lots of great information. How often, Carol wanted to know as well, how often do you feed them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So wolves in the wild, on average, eat once every 7 to 10 days. So they only eat like once a week because they're not super successful hunters. They only are successful in the hunt about 5 to 20% of the time, so not very often at all. So they don't often get food, but when they get food, they eat it so much, and that's where we get the term wolfing down. So they eat a whole bunch of food in one sitting. So for our wolves, we want to kind of copy that, but at the same time, we don't want to hurt them. We're not trying to starve them. So we do give them meals kind of throughout the week. Typically, we'll do a big meal on Saturdays, and then maybe littler meals on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or maybe Wednesdays, kind of depending on pack dynamics. So if they're all really calm, it's okay to just feed them kind of twice a week. But we'll kind of increase that if there's a lot of tension in the pack.
Okay, and Mark Andre would like to know, how far north do wolves live? And Aaron thinks all the way up to the North Pole.
Yeah, they live in the northern hemisphere. They live way up in the Arctic Circle, so kind of as far as just northern Greenland and northern Canada, kind of all the way up there. We did have in the map, I don't really want to go away from the wolves because they're very cute, but for the map,
Rael says that they have Arctic wolves, so it would be Rael and Kieran who would have Arctic wolves up where they are.
oh my gosh, that's so cool. Yeah, these two are Arctic, so this is kind of up close with what you guys would have in the wild. That's crazy. That's absolutely awesome.
Can you maybe talk about the specific adaptations that the wolves in the far Arctic might have that would help them survive?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for one thing, they are going to typically be white. That pelt I showed you guys earlier, it's kind of over here. It's sort of a light gray, but usually they're going to be either that really light gray or going to be white if they're living in the Arctic. And that helps them blend in when they're hunting those animals. They want to blend in with kind of the snowy tundra background. They also are just going to have smaller features. So they're going to have like shorter ears. They're going to have stockier, shorter legs. Their whole bodies are kind of more compact. And that's because they live in really cold regions. So if you've ever seen like a fennec fox, it's a super extreme example of a hot desert animal. So a fennec fox is this little tiny fox. It's got these little tiny skinny legs. It's got these huge ears. That animal lives in a super hot climate. And so it pumps heat out of its ears, out of its little skinny legs all the time. So the Arctic wolf, the Arctic gray wolf, is doing the exact opposite. It wants those tiny little ears. It's got little fur tufts in there to keep them nice and warm. It's got those stocky legs because they don't want to lose heat through their body, through those extremities, through those ears and those legs. And so they're going to be a lot more compact. They also just have thicker coats. So for our Arctics, when they shed in the springtime, they're shedding out that dark gray undercoat that they were born with, and then they grow it back in the fall. Our other wolves do that as well, but for the Arctics, it's a lot. It's really, really thick. They have a lot of that undercoat because they're really prepped for that Arctic winter that they would experience a lot further north. We do get pretty cold here, but we don't quite hit those Arctic temperatures.
No, I'm pretty sure that you don't in Minnesota. It does get pretty cold in Minnesota, but not as cold as the Arctic.
Yeah, we're not trying to compete with the Arctic.
We have some students who have wolves close to their communities. Alec and Elise think they saw a polar bear. They have wolves where they are. Oh, here's another one, boys and girls. Kerrigan says they think they have gray wolves, and Carol says they've seen many wolves in Sioux Lookout area. So that's pretty awesome. Oh, do they have, so two questions from Sigrid. Do they have more different layers of fur in the Arctic, and what color is their skin?
Oh, those are great questions. Yeah, so in the Arctic, they still just have the two. I think it's much thicker, but it's still only the 2 layers. So just that undercoat and that guard hair layer that we can see. So the other ones would just have much thinner, because there's like the Indian gray wolf. It still has the 2 layers, but that winter coat, that undercoat layer, is not going to be thick at all because they live in such a hot climate. For the color of their skin, I actually am now realizing I don't think I know. I'm not positive on that. I'm not going to be sure there. Yeah, that's
I think
my
the boys and girls
bad
might have,
answer. I apologize.
they might have asked that because we learned that polar bears have black skin, and that's one of their
Yeah, that's-
adaptations. So maybe
Yeah,
we could maybe look it up, or let me let you know, guys, that in a couple of weeks we're going to connect back with Stevie to do another session about wolves and look at wolves in fairy tales and how they're represented in books, and see the wolves again. And Maxime is concerned about you and your staff. He wants to know how you're able to work during COVID-19.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, so it's still, we're doing well. We're definitely a really big organization, which is nice, and people have been very, very kind with donations, which has been really, really awesome of them. We're pretty well established, so we're doing all right. It does kind of obviously stink because we are a nonprofit, and we rely on admissions when people come in and see our wolves, and that's what funds our actual wolves getting wolf care and our education in general. Oh, here's Denali too. So yes, thank you. But we are doing all right. We have been doing, we've definitely still been doing a lot of outreach with these wolflings. Obviously they've been free, but we have gotten a fair amount of donations, which has been super, super helpful. And we have some backup funds, but yeah, so our wolf care staff are still absolutely going in just like they always did. The wolves really don't know anything's different, except that they don't have people looking at them anymore through the glass. But we're doing, really hoping we're going to be able to open at some point to some capacity, hopefully soon, in order to maybe do like hikes with visitors or little family groups. We're not really sure yet right now, but yeah, we're working through it just like a lot of different organizations. I think this is kind of the recent challenge for everybody, just kind of trying to figure out how everyone's going to do this and how we're going to all survive as businesses. But yeah, thank you for your concern. We're doing well.
And we're really grateful that you reached back out to us when we, because we did contact you right early at the beginning of COVID too, because we know that some of the students had actually asked, like Kerrigan and Kieran had asked for a program on wolves. So we're just so thrilled that you were able to do this. This will be the last question, okay, Lily? So how many people take care of the wolves?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, so usually in non-COVID times, we have about 16 people in wolf care. So they all have the training. They're not all staff members. Some of them are wolf care volunteers. And so they can actually be from all around the country. And so they'll like come for a couple weeks and things like that. And they kind of have all their shifts scheduled out. There's a whole different ranking system of like levels and tiers and what people can do. So in total, it's about 16 people, but not all those people actually go into the enclosure. Some people just do behind the scenes, like, you know, chopping up deer carcasses and lovely things like that, or giving them meds through the fence, or kind of just cleaning up. But in total, it's about 16 people. With COVID, it has been reduced to kind of just the core staff that live around here and that are kind of the higher levels, just to make sure that we don't have people coming in from all over the country or anything like that, just kind of for everybody's safety.
Well, thank you so much. Aaron just said he looked it up, and yes, wolves have black skin. So thank you for looking that up so quickly. It's so great to have such a resourceful class. But I do want to thank the students for tuning in. I think this is awesome to see wolves live. Just a rare treat. We know that when we do the Toledo Zoo, sometimes we see them there too. And if you are interested in reading more about wolves, there's some really great nonfiction books. One is called Call of the Wild by Jack London. It was just made into a movie with Harrison Ford. And another one is called Never Cry Wolf, if you're a little bit older, by Farley Mowat. And it's a story about him as the author living with a wolf pack in the Arctic. It's a fantastic book, one that made me curious about wolves when I was younger. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let's give Stevie a round of applause. She can't see your chat, but everyone's saying thank you and goodbye.
That
And
was
Laura
awesome,
says
Jamie.
she loves wolves. Thanks for doing
I
this.
can watch those